Thank you guys all for participating. We're going to go through a fair amount of stuff today, mostly relating to setting up a login in HR record, and then some admin teams, and even we'll get to the invoice remittance address. So let's get going here. I'm going to go ahead and log into the system. And just want to make sure it was recording. Go ahead and log into the system. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about was creating a login and password for somebody. Now, you have to be a network administrator to create logins or to give somebody the rights to create a login. In other words, you don't have to be a network administrator to create logins. You could give that right to somebody at a lower level of security, and they could create logins to their level or lower. So you could give what's called a local user, which should be pretty much everybody in your office. You could give a local user the rights to create a login and password to local user level or lower. So you can never have somebody who is a local user create a network administrative login and password. So that being said, when you do create a login and password, the new button, you're going to hover over admin and click on the logins link. That's going to load a list of all of the logins in the system. When you are creating a new one, you're going to hit the new button, which is the green circle with the white plus in the middle. You have to link a contact record to the login and password. As you know, there's an audit trail on almost everything that a user does in the system. Well, it knows whose name to attach as the creator of a record, or as a person who revised a record last, or in the change log, what fields were changed by a specific user. It knows who that user is based on the contact record that's linked to the login and password. I'm going to hit the little magnifying glass, and it's going to open up a window. Here's where I need to search for the contact that I'm creating a login for. When you find them, you hit the word select to the left of their name. You can see now it's in the grayed out field, it's attached. Now you can issue them whatever login you want and whatever password. You can use letters, numbers, symbols, whatever you would like. When you go to the pull down, there are three levels: network administrator, local user, and client user. Network administrator is the highest you can have in the system. A network administrator can see and do everything, and anything they can't see and do, they can give themselves the rights to see and do. Okay? There should, in my opinion, there should only be 2 network administrators per system. And I say 2 only because if there's only one and that person is on vacation, then there's nobody to do some of the stuff that only a network administrator can do, like customizing forms, like customizing pull downs, things like that. Only a network administrator can do in the system. So that's why I recommend 2. So local user is going to be everybody else in your company. A client user, if you wanted to and you were using the projects module within your system, all of you have it, whether you're using general projects or needs for tenant rep, or your availabilities themselves you're managing as projects. If you wanted to, you could give your client a login and password at the client user level. They will only see the projects that pertain to them, and within those projects, they will only see the information you choose to share with them. It is a way of giving your clients access so they can see what's going on with the specific transaction that your agent is working with them on. Quite honestly, most of our clients don't use that. They use the reporting instead. But if you have some clients, and in some cases it's going to be really more corporate service clients or bigger clients that are going to even in some cases request that they have access, you can always give it to them. So let's create a local user, and I'm going to choose my time zone. hit submit. Now, is what we just did, should have disappeared. Let's take a look and make sure that it's here. Here's my list of logins. There are 59 of them. There are 3 pages worth. I have a filter bar at the top that allows me to search for a login based on any of this criteria that I want. I'm going to search by first name. And this is not the one we created. Let's do that again. I'm going to link the contact to it. We'll choose local user, our time zone. And now there it is. Now, is what we just did by creating this login and password, I'm going to use an analogy that some of you may or may not have heard from me before, is what we did is we just gave this person the keys to the house, and we said, you can come through the front door, but you can't do anything. You can't go in any of the rooms. You can't go in the hallways. You can't do anything other than just walk through the front door. By doing what we just did, we just gave somebody the keys to the house. Now is what we need to do is go in and give them access to the different parts of the house that you want them having access to. In our case, it's giving them access to the certain components of the system. To do that, we are going to hover over the little blue arrow. Put your mouse on or near it. You don't even have to be on it, just near it. And click on user groups. Each of these is a different component of the system and different levels of access within that specific module or component. So, for example, the way this is set up, if you want someone to be able to create new contacts, you need to give them contact new. If you want them to be able to see all of the contacts in the system, public or private, and be able to edit them, you can give them the admin rights. And if you notice, as I mouse over each of these, a tooltip pops up that tells me what that specific user group does. Now, there is one user group that is absolutely critical you give to every single one of your internal users, everyone at your office, and that is the internal user group, right there. If you give them no other user groups other than that, you want them to have internal. That is going to give them the ability to see the widgets. That is going to give them the ability to see different types of records in the system. Whenever you create a new record that is public, this internal user group is added to the permissions of that record. So unless a user that you're creating the login has this, they won't be able to see those records. All of your widgets all have the internal user group added to the permissions of the widget. Unless the user has this user group, they won't see the widgets. And some of you have experienced that, where you create a login and then the person goes in and it's just a blank screen. As soon as you give them this, all of a sudden, tons of stuff is going to show up for them. My recommendation is to go through the different user groups and take a look at what they do and make sure that your users are set up properly. One of the other things I would recommend doing is taking a look at your list of logins. As I've been working with different offices, going into different systems, there are many cases where we go to the logins and I'll hear, oh, that person hasn't been in our company in a long time. I didn't even know they still had a login and password. Guys, make sure that if someone leaves your company, the very first thing you do when they leave is delete their login and password. That's really, really important. Delete their login and password. Deleting their login and password, we're going to go back to our house analogy. By deleting it, it's just like taking the keys away from them or changing the locks. Any furniture they had in the house is still there. Any clothes they had in the closets of the house, they're still there. Any food in the refrigerator, it's all still there. They just can't get in anymore. If somebody leaves, delete their login and password right away. If they still need information out of there and you're willing to give it to them, then either issue them another login and password at a lower level, or you get it for them and give it to them. But if someone leaves, it's really important, just like you probably take away their access to get to your network when they leave. Same thing, remove their access to the system. All right. Oh, one of the other things I would recommend doing, guys, take a look, not only remove the logins and passwords from people that no longer work at your office, but go into the different logins that are there, go to the user groups and make sure that they're set up properly. If you want, there are some companies that will create one login for an agent, for example, and they will give that login all of the rights that they want the agents to have. Then they put their mouse on or near the little blue arrow and copy that login. Change it to the new agent, but then you could copy the user groups. You can copy the locations and business lines and even the dashboards if you want. That way you know that every single agent starts off with the exact same security rights. At that point, you may want to add additional rights or remove rights from specific agents. But at least that way you're starting them all off on an even playing field. So, I'm going to go back to our main dashboard. And here we are. If I hover over admin, click on logins again, I wanted to just point out one more thing. You need to assign a location and a minimum of one location and one business line to every single internal user in your office. You can do it from the logins list. Once you create the login, you can just put your mouse on under the little blue arrow, go to locations, and give them the appropriate location. You will only see the locations in your office. Same thing with the business lines. You will only see the business lines that are in your office, in your system. You can do it from here. Now, you can also go into the contact record, and under the admin section, you can add your locations and business lines. You're also going to need to add their bio so their information shows up on the website, which is kind of why I like doing it here, so that way you can start at the top and kind of work your way down. But at the same time, I just wanted you to be aware that if you wanted to, you could do it from the logins list. Okay. All right. Let's talk about setting up HR records. Now, and I keep going off of that admin, the logins list, but I am going to go back here because I wanted to point that out. For someone to have the ability to create HR records, there is a specific user group for HR admin. This gives the user the rights to create HR records, but not add a commission plan, not add a historical record. Those are things that have to be done for every single one of your agents. That's this user group right here, compensation. The reason I'm telling you this is some companies have one person, maybe someone in marketing or an admin, creating the HR records. Then they have someone else go in and add the compensation details. If you select it, then they have the ability to do that. So, if you have the rights, the HR admin user group, you will see this menu item. If you don't have that user group, you won't even see the menu item, period. If I click on personnel files, this is a list of all of the HR records in the system. We're in the corporate development site. You can see there's only one, Richard Ibbett. So to create a new one, you are going to press the green circle with the white plus in the middle. It's going to open up a form. Now, there are some fields on here that are really important that are required for you to even advance to the next portion of this. And those are the yellow fields. However, there are also, I highlighted them blue just so they stood out. Remember, as an administrator, you guys can customize the forms and put whatever color you want. I recommend that you do that so it stands out to you. But the yellow fields and the blue fields are the only fields you have to populate. The rest of them, you're capturing this information somewhere. If you're using an HR program or doing it through your payroll service, you're probably not going to want to populate this stuff. But if you're tracking this on spreadsheets, like I know a lot of you are, I would do it in here. You can always export this data to Excel, but I would do it from here. Okay? So, this list is a list of all of the internal contacts at your company. The cool thing about this list, as you create HR records, their name is removed from this list. Which means if you have an HR record set up for every single person in your office, not just your agents, but everybody in your office, when you go to this pull down, it should be blank. When someone new gets hired, you create their contact record, make them internal, then their name will show up on the pull down. Once you create it, their name is off there. Employment type, I'm going to say a contractor. Status is active. Are they a shareholder, yes or no? If you say yes, put the date that they became a shareholder. Now, as you scroll down, as I mentioned, there are a lot of fields of information you can populate. You guys can simplify the form. Even though it says customize, I'm going to use the word simplify. If you do decide to use this form, but you know there are certain fields that you just don't want to have on here, hide them. Get them off the form. I'm going to come down to the bottom and hit finish. Here is our HR record. It pulled the information from the contact that we selected. At this point, now you need to add a compensation plan for them, a split plan. I'm going to click on Commission Split Plans. You can see there's nothing here. Here's the new button. Now, when you put the end date, some people will want to do it in year increments. My recommendation, if your commission split plans do not change year to year, don't confuse that with starting over to zero balance. I'm talking about, do the thresholds themselves change? Do the split percentages change from year to year? Most of yours do not. They zero out again at the beginning of the year, whether you're on a calendar year or fiscal year, they zero out, but it doesn't, the plans themselves don't typically change all that often. If your office is one that they don't change often, on the end date, put something way far out in the future. That way, you just don't even have to worry about it. If this is set for the end of this year, that means that right around New Year's, I'm scrambling to set up a new split plan for every single agent for the following year. If you set this up and you put the end date far out, you don't have to worry about it. Now, if the plan changes, you can always go in and make edits to it. But if it doesn't, then you don't have to do anything. So put the end date in, put a split plan, name. I'm just going to choose standard. If you want to put shareholder versus associate, whatever you want to do, you can put this. This is just a name. And I'm going to use this by default. The idea here, guys, you can have multiple split plans set up for an agent. And some of you may have a situation where you do that. Most of you don't, but some of you may. Where an agent does a deal with a certain group, he's on one split plan. They do a deal with another group or team, they're on a different split plan. You're going to choose which one is the default. The default here is on payment application, and that's the way you're going to keep it. I want to show you the other choice. but you're not going to use that. Of all of the clients that we have using this program, none of them do it on deal booking. The agent gets paid when the company gets paid. If the company doesn't get paid, the agent doesn't get paid. That's on payment application. And that's the default. So let's do from 0 to 250. Let's say they're on a 50-50 split. When I hit add, it drops another line down. Starts me at 250. Let's go to 500. Let's hit 65. And we'll do one more. 500 and up is a 75. I'm going to hit submit. And that's it. There's our split plan. There's one more thing we need to do for this HR record, and that's add a historical record to it. So I'm going to hover over compensation in the blue menu, and I'm going to click on history. I'll click on the word. It's going to load a list of all of the historical records. There are none that are here right now. I'm going to add a new one by clicking the green circle, and let's say this is effective first of the year, and I know they're active, and the classification. Classification is an important field. I highlighted it blue on the form. You guys can highlight it any color you want, or not at all, but I recommend putting it a certain color so it stands out so you don't forget. You're going to make them either an associate or a shareholder here. And then for those of you, and it's most of you, are on the calendar year, you're going to leave this just the way it is. For those of you on a fiscal year, you want to choose the month that your year starts. This is important for year-to-date totals. This is important for reporting. This is really important that you choose the first day of your year. Like I said, most of you who are on the calendar year, you'll just leave it the way it is. There are other fields here for non-commission and bonus compensation details. Also, if someone takes a leave of absence or they're terminated, you have the ability to track this stuff. Again, if you're doing it through your payroll service or you have a third-party HR program, you probably won't want to use this stuff. But if you don't and you're tracking this in spreadsheets, probably not a bad idea to do it in here. I'm going to hit submit, and here's our history record. Now, you're going to revisit the HR record and the history record when your associates become shareholders, for those that do. It's important that you go in and you make changes to that. So we're going to come in and we're going to come and add a new history record. I loaded the list. I'll hit the new button. And let's say it's a status change. What's the effective date? Well, we know that May 1st, they became a shareholder. There's one more thing I need to do with the HR record. I'm going to edit the HR record in the colored ribbon. Now they're a shareholder, and we know that it was May 1st. If you want to put the number of shares that they own, that's fine. But it's important that you do this. You make that change. And again, this is for reporting purposes, for the business statistics report that you guys are all going to generate at the end of the year for Lori. That's important. That drives those numbers. So, two-step process. First, you're going to create the HR record. It's actually 3 steps. Then you're going to add the commission plan. Then you're going to add the history record. When somebody changes from an associate to a shareholder or a shareholder back to an associate, you're going to come in and create a new history record, and you're going to edit their HR record and change them from shareholder back to associate. I know that doesn't happen often, that it goes the other direction, but just know that when you do have somebody that goes in between those different statuses, you need to mark them on their HR record. You need to set up a new history record for them that shows when that became effective. All right. I'm going to close this. And let's talk about setting up teams. Teams refer to security in the system, to permissions. And as most of you know, when you create a new record in this system, you have the ability to make it public or private. Where everybody can view it means it's public. That's the default. Only me is private to just me. But you can also choose teams and make that record public to just a specific team or multiple teams. So the idea is for you to add the team, to make it private to a team, the team has to exist in the system first. We need to actually create that team in the system. To do that, I'm going to close this record. You have to be a network administrator to do this. I'm going to hover over user teams and click on it, and it's going to load a list of all of them. Remember, we're on the corporate development site. That's why all of these teams, it's all pulled from all of your individual systems and whatnot. When you want to create a new one, the green circle with the white plus in the middle, consistent with every single other new thing that we're doing. What's the team name? We can say Team Super Brokers. And look, what does that team manage? Do they manage a location? Do they manage a business line, a combo, a division, or a specific individual? Most of you are going to do individual. The idea here is you can set up a team and individual managed. You're going to put who the person is and then have the ability to add additional users as well, which I'm going to show you. So we'll say Rob, right? Individuals managed as Rob, that's one. And I can also come down here and I can add you, Lori. I'll put add. And it's going to put the roster down below. Now, what permissions, when I put this team onto a specific record as having the rights to see it, what permissions do I want them to have the rights to? Do I want them just to have view rights? Do I want them to be able to be administrators over it? What do I want them to have? I'm going to make them an admin. As the creator of the team, your name is attached automatically. If you don't want it there, hit the X and just remove it. I'm going to add it back. And you guys may want to keep your name on there. Not sure which one to choose, but hopefully this will work. So I'm going to hit submit. So now this team has Rob, it has Lori, and has myself on there. Now when you go to create a new contact record, if I chose the right contact for myself, when you choose teams, it's going to pop up with the teams that you created, the teams that your name is attached to. And again, I see so many because we're on the development site and I have access to see a bunch of stuff. But look, here's Team Super Brokers. I'm going to select that. This contact now, if we create it, is private to just the 3 people on this team. And all 3 of those people all have admin rights on this contact. So the idea, guys, is you're going to want to create the team first. When you create the teams, and let me tell you why I think teams are a great idea. One, you guys a lot of agents do work in a team environment now. So they do, let me see, hang on, there's a question here. Oh. There is a lot of your agents work with teams. And if they want to keep stuff private just amongst that team, you could just put specific individuals as having permissions to see the record. You could go into any contact record, or any record for that matter, and go into the permissions and add specific individuals as having the ability to see that record. But by putting the team on, the reason I like that is as you have new people that join the team, you just go into your teams and edit it and add a new person to it. That way, that new person automatically gets to see all of the records that the team has the security rights to see. If someone leaves your team because they join a different team, or they leave and they join another company, you don't have to go into all of those records and remove their permissions. Instead, you just remove them from the team, and all the records that team had the rights to see, that one user is not part of it anymore. They no longer can see it. So the idea is, if you do have that sort of environment within your office where there are teams that are sharing specific information, then I recommend setting up a team instead of just putting individuals onto the permissions of that record. We have record level security, which means you can add permissions to every different type of record in the system. The generic or the default permissions are for records to be public. Most of them anyways, not closed deals, but contacts and properties and availabilities and even comps. The default is for all those to be public. For those of you that don't want them public, you want them private to just specific people, if it's the same people that they're private to, set up a team with them, make the team have the rights to see that record. Make it private to just the team. I think you will find that will work much easier for you, especially when you have turnover within those specific teams. It's going to be a lot less work than going back and manipulating the permissions for all of the different records that the individuals have the rights to see. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. I know that's somewhat of a difficult topic to understand, but hopefully that will make sense to everyone. All right. The last thing I wanted to talk about was setting up a remittance address for your invoices. Now, you have to have a security user group. If I hover over admin and I go back to our logins list, put my mouse on or near the little blue arrow and go to user groups, you're going to see accounting right here. Admin is going to give the user the rights to do quite a few things, amongst them creating or setting up a new remittance address for your invoices. They have to have that, otherwise they're not going to even see on the main menu the accounting menu item. Account transactions is exactly that. It lets the user create account transactions. So if you want someone to be able to go in and set up the remittance address, you're going to need to give them this user group. Now, once you set up the remittance address, it's set up. You're not going to change it unless your office really moves or you open up a new one. But look, I'm going to hover over accounting and I'm going to go to invoice remittance address. And here's where, if you want to create a new one, and I'm going to let me just delete this. Add an additional remittance address. You're going to put in the information that you want here. This is going to show on your invoice, including if you want to include your taxpayer ID, if you want to include the broker on records license number, if you want to put a remittance logo or a signature image. You can put all of this information in here. Oops. And put the phone in and that. And we can put in a number here. Taxpayer ID. If you want to put wire transfer info, again, the logo, you can do all of that stuff. Now, once you set this up, you need to determine what closed deals, what invoices are going to have this remittance address. For those of you that have multiple locations under the same system, and you have your invoices that go to each of those individual offices, you can absolutely do that. But for you to tell the system which remittance address goes on which office, you're going to dictate that by the locations. So you're going to attach the locations that are in your system. Just the list of locations in your individual system will show up in this right here. So I can choose Anaheim. And if I have 2 locations, but I want the remittance address to be the same, all the invoices submitted to the same place, the same office, I can put both of them on there. Remember, when you come in here and you create a new closed deal, I'm going to do it in a new tab. When you create a new closed deal, the location is a required field. So if I choose Anaheim, this closed deal, when we get finished with it and you get to the invoices that you create will have this remittance address, because we said any closed deal with the location of Anaheim, put this address. So for those of you that do have multiple offices, or multiple locations rather, within the same office, the same system, you can set up different remittance addresses. You just have to make sure that you have each of those different locations added to your system. Which, if you're setting up your closed deals right or properly, then you will have those locations. Once you set it up, you're done. At this point, I can just hit save and I'm good. Any closed deal that I do in this system that I attach the location of Anaheim or Arizona, right there in this pull down, will have this remittance address on the invoice with this information. When you generate invoices, if you remember, you do have the ability with the toggles, and I don't have any in here, you do have the ability with the toggles to turn on or off the remittance address, to turn on or off different items within that specific invoice. I'll show you really quickly. Here. And the fastest way for me to get to an invoice is going to be wait for the dashboard to load completely and then go to the open balances. I know that there is an invoice created for these because there's an open balance. If I hover over accounting and click on invoices, when I hit print, look, I have these toggles. Include remittance address under the logo, include commission comments, display prior payments on the invoice, the deal type, the commission breakdown, the billing schedule, customer email address. This is all stuff that you control on the invoice. I can close this. If I go back here and hover over remittance addresses, you can see there's 2 of them that are set up. This one is going to be on any deals with these locations, and this one is going to be on any deals with this location. And if there are any deals in the system that don't have a location, the remittance address is just going to be blank. There won't be one. See that? There's no remittance address because this closed deal didn't have one of the locations that's attached to that specific remittance address. Okay. We made it through everything. I hope I wasn't talking too fast, and I hope I went into enough detail of each of those items with you. Does anybody have any questions that you would like to ask? if you do ask a question, I would like for you to submit it if you would in writing anyways, so we can put together an FAQs. But does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask? All right, awesome. All right, guys, thanks everybody for participating. I'll get this posted up to YouTube as unlisted. Lori, I'll send you the link and she'll get it posted up on the Insider. And if you have any questions, please shoot me an email with them. I'll put together an FAQs for you and we'll go from there. Thanks everybody. Have a great weekend and I will speak to you all soon.